In this video tutorial, I'd like to just give you a very brief overall view of Photoshop. So hopefully you have already gone to Adobe and you have signed in and you're using your Hudson Valley email and you are able to download the app and install Adobe. And now you would want to open it up and it should look something like this. It might be slightly different. I don't know if I've run the latest update. So the general tools and layout of Photoshop stays the same, but little things might change depending on the updates. So for your first assignment, I asked you to photograph some images, some points and lines. So let's go over using that as an example for this overview. Let's go over how you would open those files up. So here I am in Photoshop, and just so I have something else to look at besides here and the last images I opened up, I'm going to open them up by going up to File, Open. And what I hope you will do for this class is to make a folder for this class, Graphic Design, and then for all of your weekly homework assignments, make a separate folder for each one of those, and then keep your contents for the assignment in that folder. So that's what I have set up here. I have my Graphic Design folder, and I have Point, Line, Images folder within that, and here I can see my different images that I took for this first assignment. Now, you may have taken them on a cell phone or your regular phone, but I'm assuming you have some way of being able to copy them, whether it is through your drive or download, or just if it's on an SD card, inserting your SD card into your computer, but you now have them saved somewhere else. So you've done that transfer. And if I wanted to just open up one image at a time, I would click on it and hit open. If I want to hit them or open them all up, I'm going to hold the Shift key down after I've selected the first one, and now they're all selected. Or I could just simply click and drag and select them all and hit open. And you guys probably already know that. What I really just wanted to point out is how Photoshop opens them all in separate tabs. And there's a certain amount of information that's useful to understand in these different tabs. So first of all, we have the file name here. And we can also see what file it is. Currently, these are JPEGs. And we can also see that we're viewing this only at 16%. So this is shot with a DSLR with high resolution. So I can't actually, well, I can see it at 100%, but it's going to be very large. So I'll just zoom in here until this goes up to 100%. So you can see what I mean. I'm now viewing the image at 100%. And it's really quite large. I'd have to like move it around to be able to see it. So that's why Photoshop automatically will reduce in size, just minimize through the magnifier, the larger images. So it's just something to be aware of, that the image size that we're seeing here is not necessarily the true size. You always want to pay attention to the percentage up here. And it's also telling me that this is an RGB color mode. We'll talk about those things later. So now we have a bunch of different images open, and just to briefly go over the interface, over here is our toolbar where we will be working quite a bit. You can move this toolbar around by grabbing up at the top of it. You could switch it to be a double toolbar or a single toolbar. You can close it out, and I'll show you in a second. If you do close it out, where do you go to get it back? So there's kind of a section, a little bit of sections here in the toolbar. Our first tool is our move tool, and then we have a bunch of different types of selection and cropping tools here. And then we have in the middle tools that are more like for retouching. And then we have our paint tools, more kind of retouching. We have text down here. Selection tools, these bottom tools for zooming in, zooming out, and then if you're zoomed in, the hand tool for navigating. But what you may notice and what's really cool is that as I hover over, I'm getting from Photoshop like a little directions telling me what these tools are. And you can click on any of them and learn some more about it. Another thing to notice from the toolbar is that they all have this little triangle on the bottom. So if I hold down a tool, you'll see other tools there. And once we get over into Illustrator, you're going to see the same pattern. All right, so this is really typical for most Adobe programs. Tools embedded within other tools. So that way it doesn't take up all the screen real estate. We don't have to see them all. Something else I'd like to point out with these tools, they all have default settings. Like here's my paintbrush, for example. And currently if I try to paint, it comes out black. And I can change that color by going down to my color picker down here at the bottom. That's how I would change this color. I could pick a red, for example, or if I wanted to pick something in the blues, I'm going to slide up here, pick a blue, click OK, and now that's going to come out blue. But what do I do if I want to change the size of my brush or the opacity of my brush? So if I want to change those default features of my paintbrush, or really any one of these tools, you go up here, and your bar might be in a slightly different position. It might be docked, it might be up here. But what I'm looking for is the options bar. And the options bar allows me to tweak the default settings of any of my tools. So for example, I want to have a different type of brush. This is where I can get to all my brushes. I could make the size larger. I could look at different types of brushes. I'll pick something, you know, like this one, pencil hard, make it larger. I could change the opacity so it's not painting at 100% but only at 50%, so on and so forth. So there are all these different options for changing the default settings. And this will be true with almost all of your tools here. So for the text tool, for example, if I wanted to switch over to my text tool, oh, my computer's freezing a little bit here. And now I can go up to the options bar to choose my font type, to choose my font size, to choose if it's going to be italics or bold or so on and so forth, okay? So maybe pause this video for a second and just kind of look through what all of these tools are. You can just try doing something with them if you want. Just make note of the ones that are embedded and how you can go up here and change things. Okay, so we are going to get rid of these blobs. I'll get to that in a second. Up here at our main menu under File, that's where we go to create a new document, or open up things, save, so on and so forth, to print if you're printing at home. Under Edit, a lot of these things I'll encourage you to use as keyboard shortcuts, but we have our basic copy and paste. Also transform, free transform. These things are grayed out because my layer background is locked. I'll unlock that. I could just simply click on the lock and that is going to unlock it. And now when I go up to edit, these things are an option. So I could transform it by rotating it, for example, rotate my image, or change the size of it through scale, or so on, distort or perspective. So those things are very useful. Under image, the main one we'll be looking at here will be under image adjustments. So these are good editing things that you can do to your images, such as changing the color balance or the vibrance. Under layer, most of these things I'll encourage you to use through the layers panel itself over here. We can create new layers and folders and adjustment layers all down here with these icons on the bottom of the layers panel. Under type, well, we already saw that the options bar gave us a little bit for type, but there are even some more panels, character panels and paragraph panels, where we get more options for type here. Under select, many of these things we are going to learn through keyboard shortcuts or just use the selection tools here at the top of our toolbar for, but there's a section here for select. Filter, 3D, we're probably not going to touch upon. Viewing, so if you want to zoom in or zoom out, or if you want your rulers, guides, those kind of things that can help you with alignment, would be here under view. And window, this is where we go to open up more panels, or if we close a panel by accident. So I can see here which panels I have open, because as the check mark, I have my layers panel, I have my properties panel, that's over here. I have my tools, that's open. I have my options bar, that's open. So if I closed my tool panel by accident, I can go up to window and open it up again by clicking on it. So that's very useful to be able to access other panels. And I'm going to help, you can go to Photoshop and you can get more tutorials, which is great. Over here, so any other panels I open up, they'll appear over here. And our layers panel is one of the ones that we use an awful lot. We will be stacking and you'll have lots and lots of different layers here. And in my next video, I'll go over how you can change the names and so on and so forth. One other panel I want to talk about is the history panel. You may see this icon here, or it may not be open, so go up to Window and choose History. And once it's open, you can dock it, and it's going to be this little icon here, and you can hover and bring it over onto your panel so it's like permanently here, or you can drag it so it's its little own separate icon. Open it up. So the history panel records the last, I'm not sure, 27 steps. You can actually change however many in your presets, so it may be different. It records a whole bunch of the last steps that you made. So you can see it's recorded since the time I opened this image, and then I made those brush marks, and maybe I will, let's see, it recorded when I unlocked it. It's made into a layer. I'll do something else you can watch. I'll transform it. I'll rotate this layer, and now that's going to show up here as another step in my history panel. So in most programs, you're probably used to the idea that you can do Control-Z or Command-Z and go back unlimited amount of times. But in Photoshop, Control-Z or Command-Z, if you're on a Mac, only works one time. If you want to go back lots of steps, you have to go through your history panel. And to do this, you're just going to click on the name of the step that you want to go back to. And you can see as I'm clicking on them, the ones below gray out, because those are the ones that are going to disappear. And I'm seeing them all disappear. All right, so if I want to go back to the way this was originally, I can click on Open. If I want to keep just those two lines, the rest of them are grayed out. So now the next edit that I make, they're going to disappear. So now I got rid of the ones that were grayed out, and I'm starting over my history panel. Right, so the history panel is just really useful for feeling like you can make lots of edits and not have to worry about going back or not. One other feature of the history panel is because it only records about 27 steps here, you also can take some snapshots. So that's with this icon here of the camera, take a snapshot. And so now I could go back to, this is the way my image looked when I opened it, and this is my snapshot from this state here. And so now I could continue adding, doing more edits, or cropping this or rotating it or doing whatever I want to do to it, add text. And I can always get back to this state while the program is open, or while this file is open, I should say, just by clicking on this snapshot. Okay, so for example, I could add some text here. This is my text, and I'm going to add that text, and so now that's been added on here, and I will create another snapshot. So now I have 3 snapshots: the way that my image looked when it first opened, the way my image looked when I put those 3 paints on them, and then the one with the text. And so I could just continue on editing. I could go back to my original one and I could continue editing, but I can still always get back to these other states while this image is open. But as soon as I save it and close it down, your history panel erases. So if you like the versions that you created, you can click on this third icon here, which is to create a new document from it, or just do a file save as and save it as a different name, so you have a separate version. All right, so that's the basic overview of Photoshop. If you'd like to get into some more details, you can go to Adobe and you can look up their Adobe Photoshop tutorials. But as we go through different assignments, I will be explaining more and more details and specific aspects of Photoshop for our homework.